Have you ever lost sight of someone just for a second? You look away, and when you look back, they're gone. Now imagine that person never comes back. That's exactly what happened in the baffling case of Stephen Clark. He stepped into a public bathroom on a busy afternoon, and he was never seen again. It was December 28th, 1992, a chilly bank holiday in the English seaside town of Saltburn by the Sea. 23-year-old Stephen Clark, a quiet and well liked local man, was out for a walk with his mother, Doris. A road accident in his childhood had left Stephen with permanent injuries, a noticeable limp, and limited use of his left arm. The two had walked a couple of miles from their home in Marksky to the Saltburn promenade. Around 3 p.m., they decided to use the public toilets near the pier. Doris went into the ladies', Stephen went into the men's. It was a perfectly normal, everyday moment. Doris came out and waited and waited. A few other men left the toilets, but her son wasn't one of them. After a while, she figured she must have missed him, that he maybe started to walk back home by himself. So Doris headed home expecting to see him there. But the house was empty. Stephen wasn't there. He hadn't taken anything with him that day. No wallet, no house keys, nothing. His father, Charles, immediately raced out to scour the beach and cliffs, but there was no sign of his son anywhere. When Stephen was reported missing, the police were stumped. How does a man just vanish from a public toilet, with his mother waiting right outside, on a promenade filled with people? Massive searches of the coastline, the woods, and the town turned up nothing. Nobody, no clothing, not a single clue. For years, the case went completely cold. But the story wasn't quite that simple. In the days after he disappeared, a few confusing sightings popped up. A woman who knew Stephen was certain she saw him walking on Marshkey High Street near his home after he was supposedly last seen at the toilets. Another man claimed he'd even spoken to him briefly that same afternoon. These sightings suggested Stephen might have left the toilets and started heading home, only to vanish somewhere along the way. But none of them could be 100% confirmed, leaving everyone with far more questions than answers. For 28 years, the mystery of what happened to Stephen Clark was frozen in time. Then in September of 2020, the case took an unbelievable turn. Acting on new information, which included an anonymous letter they received years earlier, police reclassified Stephen's disappearance as a murder. And in a move that no one saw coming, they arrested two suspects. His own parents, Charles and Doris Clark. The elderly couple, then 78 and 81 years old, called the experience mental torture. Police searched their house and even dug up their garden, looking for any trace of their son, for 17 agonizing weeks. The very people who had reported Stephen missing were the prime suspects in his murder. But the ordeal ended when prosecutors found there simply wasn't enough evidence to move forward, and Charles and Doris was released without charge. That anonymous letter that triggered the whole thing, it was later discredited. The investigation into Stephen Clark's disappearance is still technically open, though police have said they have no new leads to follow. So what do y'all think happened that day? Was it a tragic accident on the cliffs, a planned decision to start a new life, or something much darker? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you find these unsolved cases as fascinating as I do, think about subscribing for more. Today, more than 3 decades later, Stephen Clark is still a missing person. There's no proof that he's alive, but there's also no evidence to suggest he isn't. Did he tragically fall from the cliffs into the sea? Did he simply walk away to start over? Or did he have the terrible misfortune of running into the wrong person? For his family, the pain has been unimaginable. They've lived with the grief of not knowing, only to have that grief compounded by the horror of being accused of his murder. The case remains a haunting Impossible riddle. The story of a man who walked into a bathroom and vanished into thin air.